Hi, you've reached my detailed technical video review, my vlog, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to apologize. This week was supposed to be slides. It was not slides. I'm actually going through the slides until I can get them finished. I'm not done. It's not that well, yeah, okay. It is that I should have been done, but I've had other things that came up, work related and structure wise, that have forced me to kind of not finish the slides. And I apologize for that. It's for me right now. It's just more a matter of making sure I'm able to and building on and delivering the components I need. And I apologize. I'm moving the slides around. So anyway, in my What's on Scott's Mind, I talked about the first 4 slides of the deck, introducing the concept. So if you need kind of refresher or more information or data or things are missing, go pick up What's on Scott's Mind. It'll help you out. All right. So the first part of my deck, based on the book, The 4 Debts, is diagnosing the debts. Now, part of diagnosing the debts is really important. And I don't mean that in the sense that, pardon me, my nose is itchy. I don't mean that in the sense that it's really important in the sense that it's make or break. It's more that it's a skill set thing. I know a lot of really smart people. I constantly listen to them. I constantly nuance what I'm doing and nuance what I'm building based on what smart people tell me. Just because if you listen to smart people, eventually you'll find the answer that you're looking for. Just keep listening. Eventually it's there. But the other side of that is understanding what does it mean to diagnose a debt, right? So most organizations have a very, very strong process to diagnose technical debt. Most organizations are pretty good, right? They know, absolutely relatively, based on consulting fees or based on hiring a partner or based on previous migrations, they know how much a migration costs, right? $144.73 per desktop to do a migration, right? Whatever that number is. That's perfectly great. That's awesome. But the other 3 debts can be very disruptive financially for the organization. So it's important to diagnose the debts and diagnose them properly. Data debt has to be properly diagnosed in the sense that there are multiple sides to the data debt problem, right? The first is, do I have enough information? The other is, I have enough information, right? That's the first one. Got to diagnose that, right? Are you in which bucket are you in, right? Are you in bucket A or bucket B? That's important, right? Then the rest of the diagnosis, right, is can I get to the data? Can I not get to the data? That's the topology and connectivity buckets that you need to be aware of, right? So when you're looking at data debt, you need to understand those 4. And then 5 and 6. Should I get to the data? And can I get to the data? Now, this is a different can I, right? The first can I is connectivity, getting to the data structurally. I can actually traverse the network, traverse wherever it is I have to go to get to the data. The other is, am I allowed to? Which I probably should have called that bucket, am I allowed to, right? Should I and can I, am I allowed to are 2 different things, right? Because am I allowed to says you have security limitations that prohibit you from actually connecting to that data. And, should I is the ethical question of is the data appropriate, right? Is it appropriate? Should you be using it? Blah, blah, blah. Right. So when we consider those 2, it's very important. It's very critical. It's very, deep. That's how you diagnose data debt. You begin to look at all of that. And then you have to go into the data scientist side of data debt and determine, are there other limitations to that data debt? For example, you can have awesome data. You can have all the data in the world, but you have no tagged metadata. You can't get back at it. You can't search it. And if you can't search it, you can't use the depth of it. You could certainly get to it, but you can't necessarily use it. And that becomes an important thing when you consider, the application of data, right? So that's kind of diagnosing data debt. If you diagnose personnel debt, you have to be really careful. The initial executive decision anytime personnel debt comes up is layoffs. We're seeing it now in the U.S. economy. It's a bad thing. It is not a positive thing. It is a very negative thing. Because it is a short-term fix. It's not a long-term solution. You're going to end up regretting the layoff sooner than the people you laid off are going to regret being laid off. It's painful to get laid off, but the reality is it's an executive decision. It's not the best decision. So you have to balance personnel debt against what is the reality, right? Because it's harder to train somebody on your organizational environment than it is to train them on technologies. I can teach anybody how to code. It takes time, but I can do it. I can teach anybody AI. I have my Aura AI model that I built, that I share, that is available. I do a weekly blast so that people get a lesson a week, just sitting on LinkedIn. But I also have the full version available for my patrons of the Aura Aware model. That model is designed to help people learn AI. That's resolving one part of personnel debt. And there are many components of personal debt you have to go into. And then the last is security debt. And security debt is often bucketed into the risk category. And it is not necessarily organizational risk. It is, however, something that you do have to be very aware of. And security, we always have to be worried, do we have too much or too little? No matter what, security debt is the Goldilocks debt. And by Goldilocks, I'm talking about the astronomical and the fairy tale version of what Goldilocks debt means. Goldilocks debt means just right, where it should be, right? If we remember the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, she gets on Papa Bear's bed, it's way too hard. She gets on Mama Bear's bed, and it's way too soft. She gets on Baby Bear's bed, and it's just right. Astronomically, a planet that is in the Goldilocks zone of a solar system means that it is in the habitable zone of that sun. For different size sun, different type of sun, that zone varies. But there is a Goldilocks zone for every single star. So being in the Goldilocks zone for security debt is critical. Don't go too harsh and don't go too soft. Now, years ago, we used to always say put the harshest security on the computer and the least harsh on the user. The reason being, if the user logs into 3 machines in the course of a day, you're applying security 3 times to that user. Versus if you have the security on the machine, when the machine boots, the security is applied. So it's just things to think about. Security debt becomes a critical path component of kind of how you head forward. So ending up this section, we're talking about the concept of diagnosing debts. And we have talked about how you can diagnose the 4 debts that are critical to the organization. I want to thank you so much for listening. More coming next week. Hopefully the slides will be done.